Musitano and his brother Pat have been connected to a number of mob-related killings and other crimes in southern Ontario. They served time in relation to a 1997 murder.
A daylight shooting here in the parking lot of a plaza.
A member of a notorious Ontario mob family was gunned down outside his home in what police are calling a targeted shooting.
Hey guys, in today's video we'll be taking a look at one of Canada's oldest crime families, Hamilton, Ontario's Musitano Crime Family. It was one of the big three crime families in Hamilton and shared territory with the notorious Papalia and Luppino-Violi crime families. The family's origins in Canada date back to 1937, when Angelo Musitano fled to Canada from Calabria, Italy, after killing his own sister. Angelo had just been released from prison after serving a murder sentence and found out that his sister was pregnant before she was married. Due to this, he thought his sister had disgraced the family name and dragged her through the streets before killing her in front of her boyfriend's house. This barbaric act got him the nickname the Beast of Delian-Uova. Angelo also had various weapon offenses to his name at the time. In 1940, an Italian court convicted Angelo and sentenced him to 30 years in prison after he had fled Italy and was already in Canada. He had fled to Hamilton, Ontario, where he lived under the name Jim, and used his Calabrian connections to establish a criminal network. The rest of his family emigrated to Canada in 1952, and Angelo helped raise his brother's two sons, Dominique and Anthony Tony Musitano. As he raised the two brothers, he also taught them all about the Calabrian Mafia. However, in 1965, the RCMP finally caught him and he was extradited to Italy to serve his sentence. Fortunately for him, his nephews would go on to forge the family's name in Ontario's criminal underworld, using what he had taught them. At the time, the Musitanos were smaller and less powerful than the two rival crime families of Hamilton. However, a string of murders and bombings would soon come and elevate their position in the underworld. The Violi crime family had lost a lot of influence with the murder of its head, Paolo Violi, in 1978, when he was invited to a bar to play cards and ended up being shot in the head. The killing was linked to Montreal's powerful crime boss, Vito Rizzuto. However, it also opened up the Hamilton territory for the Musitanos. That same year, Dominique Musitano, the elder of Angelo's two nephews and the Musitano crime family's head at the time, was charged with conspiracy to commit extortion after police uncovered a protection racket in Ontario's trucking industry. Dominique owned a haulage company in Hamilton and was involved in extortion of other trucking businesses. However, he denied the charges and ended up being acquitted in 1983. His brother, Anthony Musitano, was also racking up convictions in the 70s and the 80s. His early charges included possession of a prohibited weapon and obstructing police. However, he was soon arrested on more serious charges of bombing businesses across Hamilton. His activities led to some publications even calling Hamilton the Bomb City for a brief time. Tony was convicted of the bombings in January 1983 and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. While in prison, Tony orchestrated the murder of Dominique Rocco. Dominique was the son of the legendary Calabrian mobster Michael Rocco, also known as Mike the Baker. Mike was a member of the notorious Siderno group and an ally of the Musitanos. However, after his death, Dominique took over as the family's boss. His activities were a cause of concern for his allies as well as his rivals. The Musitanos had been providing drug shipments to the Rocco family since the 70s. Unfortunately, Dominique's playboy lifestyle and a liking for cocaine meant that he was using a lot of the cocaine himself. He was constantly behind on his payments and at one point owed the Musitano family as much as $500,000. This is when he made another grave mistake. He tried to enter the Hamilton market, which was already controlled by the Musitanos. As Dominique got out of control, Musitano became tired of him and decided to kill him. Tony Musitano befriended a petty criminal named Billy Rankin in prison and hired him to carry out the hit on behalf of the family. The plot was shared between the family through Tony's nephew, Giuseppe, who paid multiple visits to his uncle in prison. However, unknown to them, the conversations were being recorded by the RCMP. On December 10, 1983, Dominique Rocco was invited to discuss a drug deal with the Musitanos. He was taken to a railway track and executed. Dominique, Tony, Giuseppe, and Rankin were arrested in March of 1984. In 1985, Tony was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and given a 12-year sentence to be served concurrently with his arson sentence. Dominique Musitano was given 6 years in the same case, however, he was paroled after 2 years because of his deteriorating health. Tony also got full parole in 1990 and claimed to have retired from the criminal underworld. Dominique was leading the family alone, but his health was constantly getting worse. He had two sons, Pascal Fat Pat Musitano and Angelo, who was named after the beast of Delianova. Pat had developed a liking for the underworld and used to read novels and history of crime. He was given the chance to live a different life and get higher education from anywhere he wanted. However, he was more fascinated with the ways of the Mafia and was seen as the successor to his father in the business. He had already taken the fall for his father in a minor criminal conviction in 1992 for possession of stolen items, as well as also running a tire dump along with his father. Pat was a suspect in an arson case when one of his properties went up in smoke in 1993. He was accused of committing insurance fraud as police observed a pattern of well-insured Musitano properties catching fire. Dominique Musitano died of heart failure in 1995. Hamilton's big crime families were present at the funeral, and his casket was carried by the notorious mob boss Johnny Pops Papalia, also nicknamed the Enforcer. John Papalia was the strongest mob boss in Hamilton and earned a reputation through the infamous French Connection. It was a conspiracy to traffic opium from the Middle East to France, where it was refined into heroin and smuggled to the US and Canada. Pat Musitano was heading the Musitano family after his father's death. He was cleared of the arson charges in 1996, but stayed on the police radar for running a gambling and betting ring. The Hamilton police had estimated that the family was earning close to $14 million per year through illegal betting and gambling at the time. Pat was charged with illegal bookmaking in an investigation called Project Windfall. 24 other people were also charged, including Giuseppe, who was charged with operating illegal gambling machines at a bar owned by the Musitanos. However, charges against Pat were dropped once again, as 8 other accused took the charges. Giuseppe was also found guilty and was fined $3,500. The Musitano family had remained a prominent player in Hamilton for the last few decades, but they became more ambitious after Pat and Angelo took over. Pat Musitano attended big-time social gatherings, traveled in flashy cars, and was surrounded by guards at all times. One police sergeant even called him Tony Soprano before Tony Soprano was on television. The two brothers wanted to climb the criminal ladder even further, and the man standing in their way was Johnny Pops Papalia. The Musitanos owed Papalia $250,000 in bookmaking debts and remained in his shadow when it came to Hamilton's underworld. So the family allegedly decided to carry out a hit on Papalia in May 1997. The man hired for the job was hitman Kenneth Murdoch, who had served the Musitano family for 2 generations. John was fatally shot in the head in a parking lot outside his vending machine business. The Musitano brothers then ordered a hit on Niagara Falls mobster Carmen, who was a lieutenant to Papalia. The Musitanos feared that Carmen would retaliate for Papalia's death and take out the brothers. Murdoch murdered Carmen in the doorway of his home. The killings wiped out the leadership of the Papalia crime family and created a power vacuum in Hamilton. A few months after the 2 murders, Pat Musitano and his cousin Giuseppe met Montreal boss Vito Rizzuto of the Sicilian Mafia for a late-night meeting in Toronto. The Sicilian and Calabrian mafias originating from Italy have traditionally remained at odds with each other. Despite belonging to the Calabrese Mafia, it was clear that the Musitanos had decided to back the Sicilians in Ontario, where Calabrian mobsters had run the underworld for decades. The decision to back Vito Rizzuto did not sit well with the Calabrian Mafia. With Papalia out of the way, the time was right for Musitanos to rule Hamilton. However, things didn't go exactly as planned for them. Murdoch was arrested soon after the murders and flipped once the police told him that the Musitanos were now planning on getting rid of him. The police played audio tapes of the Musitano brothers mocking and laughing at Murdoch behind his back, and calling him a dim-witted scumbag. The Musitanos were also caught joking that it would be better if Murdoch died in some tragic accident. Hearing all of this, Murdoch became a cooperating witness against the family. He told the authorities that he had been working for the Musitano family since 1985. That was when he carried out the first murder for them. He was ordered to execute a factory janitor named Salvatore, whose brother owed gambling debts to Pat's father, Dominique. Murdoch also said that he had promised Dominique Musitano that he would take care of his kids no matter what, and it was the dumbest decision he ever made in his life. Murdoch also claimed that the younger brother, Angelo, was with him when he went to execute Carmen. Angelo wanted to pull the trigger himself, but Murdoch wouldn't let him do it. According to Murdoch, Pat also had another shooting on his mind. He had ordered him to enter a coffee house with a machine gun to shoot the leaders of the Luppino-Violi group. That would get rid of all of the criminals and elevate Pat to the position of a godfather in the Hamilton area. They had yet to proceed with the plan when Murdoch was arrested. Both Pat and Angelo were charged with the first-degree murder of John Papalia, while Angelo was also charged for Carmen's murder as there was no concrete evidence to connect Pat with the second murder. Seeing that Angelo could go to prison for a long time, Pat also took the charges for the Carmen hit in a plea deal that would see the Papalia murder charges dropped. The brothers were convicted in 2000 and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Due to this, they could not take advantage of Papalia's murder. The brothers reportedly also lost respect on the streets for carrying out such brazen shootings. According to authorities, they were seen as too careless for business and were also in the Calabrians' bad books for backing Sicilians in Ontario. The Musitano brothers were continuously accused of illegal activities from prison. They were accused of gambling, muscling, and drug involvement, but without any concrete evidence. They deny any such activity and filed multiple grievances against the Canadian prison system. In 2004, both brothers were denied parole. The brothers mentioned that the notoriety of their name was unfairly interfering with their lives. By the time they got out in 2006, they had made too many enemies. The drug world they wanted to become the boss of was becoming more and more difficult for them. Their main protector, Vito Rizzuto, was extradited to the US to face multiple criminal charges and serve jail time, and the Musitanos were at their weakest in his absence. They had clearly backed the wrong horse, so they quietly settled back into Hamilton. After a decade of relative calm, the peace was broken once again. On May 2, 2017, Angelo Musitano was shot dead in his truck in the driveway of his home in broad daylight. It remains unclear who carried out the hit, as 2 of the 3 men allegedly involved in the murder evaded authorities and fled to Mexico. The authorities did arrest a 3rd suspect, but he was later released as the court found that he was not connected to organized crime. Friends of Angelo Musitano say he had left the life of crime at the time of his death, and was in the process of writing a book about his life. The book was titled I Found Him, and contained admissions of his criminal past, and according to sources, could have been a reason for his death. He wrote in this alleged book, I was born into a family, not just any family, but the family. In other words, a family associated with organized crime. A police wiretap presented in court revealed a conversation between a mobster and an undercover police agent discussing the Musitano brothers. In that conversation, mobster Dominic Violi told the agent that whoever killed Angelo was actually trying to send a message to Pat. He also said that Pat Musitano will be next to go. Almost 2 months after Angelo's death, Pat Musitano's home was shot multiple times at night. Pat refused police protection and also refused to cooperate. Angelo's shooting was the first in a string of murders, including that of Daniele Ranieri, who is believed to have orchestrated Angelo's murder. He was found dead in a ditch in Mexico in 2018. And 2 years later in 2020, James Cudmore, the suspected gunman who had fled to Mexico after the hit on Angelo back in 2017, was found dead as well. He was found in a car on the side of a rural road in Mexico. Authorities believe that the deaths of Daniele and Michael could either be revenge from the Musitanos, or more likely it could just be the underworld tying up loose ends. The leading evidence to this took place 2 months before Angelo's hit. The shooter had accidentally killed an innocent woman instead of the intended target of the son of a reputed gangster, Saviero Serrano. Mob expert James Dubrow mentioned to the Toronto Sun, the killing of the woman in Vaughan by accident wasn't very professional at all. The mob does not like that. Killing the hitman after a hit, even years later, is an old Mafia story. There was also an attempt on the life of Natale Luppino, who was a senior member of the Luppino crime family. His brother, Rocco Luppino, was one of the men charged with Dominic Musitano on extortion charges in 1978. Natale survived, but Cici Luppino, the son of Rocco Luppino, was shot to death in January 2019. In April 2019, Pat's uncle Tony Musitano died of natural causes, but Pat did not attend the funeral. He was targeted just 2 days after the funeral outside his lawyer's office. He was shot 4 times and sent to the hospital. Pat survived the shooting and was out of the hospital just after a week. However, his days were numbered. Everybody around the family was jumping ship, and with the deaths of Angelo, Tony, and Vito Rizzuto, who died of natural causes in 2013, Pat was said to be a dead man walking. Pat himself knew that he was being hunted. He had known that even before Angelo's murder. He had ordered an armor-plated SUV a few months before Angelo's death. He had also switched from his flashy cars to more modest ones in an effort to be unnoticeable. However, his fate was decided, and on July 10, 2020, Pat Musitano was shot to death beside his armor-plated SUV in broad daylight. His cousin, Giuseppe, sustained injuries in the incident. At the time of his death, Pat was a partner in a construction company that was accused of illegal dumping and was being investigated for fraud. 9 days after Musitano was killed, the remains of one of his associates, Grant Edward, were discovered near London. A retired RCMP officer later told a news agency that in his opinion, Musitano was betrayed. A week after Pat's shooting, his cousin Giuseppe's garage had the word "rat" painted on it, while 2 cars sitting in the driveway were set on fire. According to crime experts, it may have been a sign that mobsters think Giuseppe either betrayed Musitano or he was speaking with law enforcement. It is believed that the Musitano family's reign of 8 decades in Hamilton came to an end with the death of Pat Musitano. However, their influence was already limited since Vito Rizzuto's demise in 2013. Authorities believe that the fall of the Musitano family doesn't mark the end of violence or criminal activity in Ontario. In fact, it's a cycle and a power vacuum that will now be filled with new faces carrying out the same activities. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more in the future. Let me know what you'd like to see next in the comments down below. Thanks for watching and have a good one.